So movement confidence is the fifth and final pillar. Movement confidence is really important to understand that this is not always a problem for most people. I would say 50% of the time, someone might come in because their back hurts, but when you go through that standing assessment, there's no problems. They'll often call it the physio's curse. They'll come in and they'll have no pain. Take that individual and understand that hesitation and guarding is clearly not their problem, so they can move fine. So this might not be a neurological problem. This is most likely capacity. If you're someone that comes in a lot of pain and you're terrified to bend and you're terrified to touch your toes, which we see a lot, that's when we look at, is this structural or is it neurological or is it both? You'll find that the hesitation might improve as you do more reps. This is when we understand this is just a nervous system doing its job. It's protecting you because it thinks moving and bending is a threat. However, the nervous system at this stage is now flagging things that are dangerous when they're not dangerous. That's a protective mechanism, and that self builds a vicious cycle. This leads on to fear avoidance. This is a behavior that is generally going to happen with most people who are avoiding movements because they know it might hurt. They might not go to the gym because it hurts, might never deadlift again because it hurts. These are common problems we have to address. And so this is why rehab needs to be built around graded exposure. We need to gradually build that movement you're terrified of safely, confidently, and with objectivity. If you can't touch your toes, I'm going to eventually get to the point where you can touch your toes 20 times within one set. And this is why it's such an important pillar, because someone can come in and move with no hesitation. That's where we need to appreciate that pain is not a KPI we have to trust all of the time. This leads all the way back to pillar one. And this is where we go on to two case studies that we've had recently come into the clinic of two amazing clients that we've worked with prior. Now, the first case study is an individual who's active, they're always training, they're always doing something. They were brilliant through the first rehab process where they had earned the right to go back to what they loved doing. They noticed a symptom, something wasn't right, but they ignored it. They didn't make any contact. And what we found over the last couple of months, that pain started getting a little bit worse, until one awkward movement created a flare up. We had to sit down, we talked about their problems, they talked about their goals, we talked about what they were doing when they were previously with us and what they stopped doing between then and now. We figured out that 2 of the 5 pillars were not addressed, and this unfortunately must have been enough for that flare-up to reoccur. Within the first couple of weeks of the rehab process, we built pillars back up, and we've slowly started seeing them back to normal training, back to squatting, back to doing what they love doing with confidence. But now they know that all 5 pillars need to be actively managed, and we've given them the strategy to do so. The second case study is a bit fresher. Now, this individual had a really significant disc herniation and a very long rehab process with us. We got them to the point where they could gym, they could golf, they could do everything they wished to do. Unfortunately, 7 months ago, they had a bit of a change in job, they had a change in stress, they had a change in lifestyle. All of these added up and little niggles started reoccurring. They didn't make any contact, they just thought it would go away. Now, what's really important is we went through the 5 pillars, and unfortunately, every single pillar was lost. And this is just true life. Things change, life changes. We just need to be really consistent and understanding that habits need to be maintained. They came back to us, and now we're in the acute stage of just earning the right to get their movement pattern safely back from the ground to standing to the gym. This is something that will take up to 4 to 8 weeks to fully return back. However, those pillars will no longer be forgotten. And sometimes flare-ups like this teaches you not to ignore those signs in the future. It's the harsh rule of life. So to finish, this is where I really want you to reflect. Flare-ups are common. I've had flare-ups. Flare-ups will happen in people's lower back rehab journeys. If you've had multiple flare-ups, I want you to reflect on those 5 questions. Are you tracking and adapting your total weekly demand? Have you progressed through all 3 phases of your trunk capacity? If so, retest. Can you still do phase 1? If not, go back, work on them, make sure that they're in your training volume and your training plan. Third, training consistency. Are you still actively hitting 80% of your planned sessions? When it comes to recovery, Is everything still in check? Is your sleep, nutrition, and stress management still being dialed in? And finally, movement confidence. Are you moving with thoughtless, fearless movement? Or is there slight hesitation or fear starting to creep slowly back in? If so, do not hesitate, get in touch. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Looking forward to hearing from you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day.